In this video, we're going to discuss why this will be my last Naruto Storm series online that I ever do, most likely. So, this will most likely be the last time that I basically ever play Naruto Storm Connections, or that I ever make a series of it, record it, and then upload it to YouTube for you guys, for your enjoyment, for your entertainment, for your education primarily. Battle analysis has always been that. Battle analysis started officially back in Naruto Storm 3 many, many years ago, more than a decade ago, with a friend of mine who was from Greece. And he was a really awesome guy, really amazing person, super chill, super awesome, which it's not that there aren't nice people now that play the game, or that there aren't chill or cool people now that play the game, but the nature of making the game competitive and forcing the game to be competitive, or more competitive than it should be, right, has created a vacuum that ejects, and like a reverse vacuum that propels out, or I guess a vacuum that basically no, a reverse vacuum that basically repels out all of these types of players, right? Or the majority of these types of players. So you have to have a certain level of, say, thick skin, or a certain level of ideology and thinking to stay playing in Naruto Storm games. And when I say that, I mean modern games like Naruto Storm 4 and Naruto Storm Connections primarily. I don't necessarily mean Revolutions or Storm 3 and Generations and Storm 2. And the reason for that is the communities aren't there in the same way to promote competitiveness. It's not that we weren't competitive back in the day, or the people that play that aren't competitive. They are, but they aren't as hyper competitive. And when you're hyper competitive, you engineer the fun out of the game. You engineer the positive experience out of the game. And what I've learned over the last month or so is, when you come into other anime games, anime fighting games, and anime arena fighters with that mentality, it is not really the best mentality to have for most of those games. So an example of that would be, even on my own end, playing Naruto Storm games at the highest possible level, even higher than most people can possibly conceive, right? Unless it's explained and taught, which the environment is not really fertile for me to do that. The environment is not really inhabitable for me to do that. It's not something that most people crave, understand, want, yearn for, or are interested in, even slightly. A lot of the times there is a subset of the people that do want that. There is a small group of people that still want that, and they perceive it however they perceive it, but they just enjoy that. They want that. They're looking for that, right? And that is this type of meaningful play, meaningful expression, truly competitive games where both players can respect each other, be gentlemen shinobi, right? Or maybe not go that far, but be able to understand what they are doing and what the other person is doing, and understand that the skill and the power and the decision making comes from them, and all the reward that comes from a win when you do that is really a euphoric experience, and a euphoric high that you get, and a deep satiating satisfaction that you get when you play this way. It is a much higher level of not just competitiveness, not just skill, but also gratification, for the individual, both when they win and they lose. For me, when I win and I lose. For you, when you win and you lose, if you play this way. But the majority of people in Storm 4 and Storm Connections competitive, they do not play this way. They do not really fully understand what this is. And they play mainly with their supports, right? The support is the main, not the main is the main, right? The main is less important, one. And two, the other aspect of that is a broken aspect of the game, an exploitable aspect of the game, is the quote-unquote skill in those people's perception, in those people's experience, right? And they aren't necessarily bad people, right? It's just a culture. In fact, a lot of them are probably pretty decent people, but when you go and do this over time, you actually, it's almost impossible not to do bad things, at least some of the time. It's almost impossible not to have a bad attitude some of the times. It's almost impossible to not create, more negativity and woe in the world and destruction in the world than it is to create a more positive experience, because there isn't a symbiotic experience there, a healthy ecosystem experience. There's no balance because you are literally using broken, unbalanced mechanics to express skill. You are literally using brokenness and negativity to emphasize power and control, fantasies of power and enjoyment of power over others. And whoever can do that first is the victor. Whoever knows the broken tech first is the victor. And skill is not about tech, right? Tech doesn't make the man makes the man, you know? Um, it's, of course, techniques are very important. And techniques, to a certain level, techniques that require your skill primarily in decision making that don't overpower the other person is very important. But techniques that when you just press a button or two or three, right, and then it just flies off by itself and it overpowers your opponent, and it's an option select, right, which is like an option that you select most of the time that just covers all your bases. And this is the same thing. The entire Storm 4 competitive scene is based off of this, where they call it jitsu buffering, which really it's a buffered jitsu. It's a buffered grab. It's not a grab buffer, right? I'm not trying to insult anyone. This is just what it is, because you buffer the input and then it comes out. Now, the problem is when you do something like that, I haven't played Storm 4 in a while, but when you do something like that, to the best of my recollection, if you use certain jitsus, right, they will just go out there, be out on the field, cover most of your bases. Okay, perfect example. Sasuke's Inferno Fireball. Naruto, the last Naruto's running Rasengan, where there's two clones or whatever, or multiple clones if you enhance it and all that. If you do this, it just covers all your bases, right? That Infernal Fireball eats up most things in its path and even cuts through other projectiles, making them useless or invalid. And if you just throw that out there and then dash in, now you've done a layered, well, that's a little bit more skill-based, and people probably are doing that more now, but they weren't even doing that before that much, right? So even adding that one extra level of skill and decision-making, right, will make, backed up by that initial option select of the Infernal Fireball, just makes the entire thing broken, makes the other person not have very many options to defend against. And on top of that, they were getting the chakra back for free. That was really the nail in the coffin that really sealed the deal, in terms of creating this brokenness or a lack of skill where people just maniacally, robotically do these things over and over again. And now there's a culture in place where this is the norm. Now there's a culture in place where this is skill, right? And the reality is it's not at all. It's the opposite of skill. And of course, you can do that every once in a while, right? And if you use a 2-man team instead of a 3-man team, this actually makes the game a lot more skill, because there's a lot less options to select, and you actually find yourself playing meaningful neutral, which some people have actually picked up on that watch this channel. Some actually, very skilled players in the community do this now, and they've picked up on it, and they've been doing it a little bit before. It's becoming more popular, and some bigger YouTubers also do this as well. But they still usually miss out on some small caveats that end up negating the majority principles and understanding of what skill is in Naruto Storm games. So I don't mean to insult anyone or anything like that from this. This is just an educational learning thing, right? Where, for example, if you use mm, if you use Sasuke with a Chidori, and then you use Shisui, right, in Storm 4, or say in Storm 4, but you actually choose in that one, in that game you can choose the Jitsu. So say you choose the triple fireball Jitsu, which is I think the Halo dance or something like this. I forget what it's called, but the really really strong broken Jitsu where he uses three um like fireballs, right? And but they don't look like fireballs, they look like crescent moons or whatever. And it's like, well, that hits three times, it's widespread, and you get your chakra back for free, and you get a free supported dash entry or do whatever you want, right? And it just covers all your bases, and it gives you too much for very little. And it's a lot better than almost all of the things in the game, most of the things in the game, right? So say you do that, and then you use Sasuke, and you're using a two-man team, and you say, oh look, I'm playing with skill. But the reality is you're getting all that neutral for free, right? Those three fireball jutsus, right, or blades of fire, will cover all of that neutral for free, allowing you to approach for free without any consequence or much of any consequence. Very little chance that anyone can really counter that most of the time with most teams, especially most popular teams, right? So the whole idea of having these two-man teams is, yes, you can have some strong things for jitsus and grabs and characters, but you cannot have them broken, if that makes sense. Right? Once you get to the point where it's too much, it becomes broken. And what I would say is, if you use Shisui in Storm 4, you use a normal fireball where there's just a single fireball that comes out, and then pick some other character that's similar or equivalent, right? And then that way, you still have to work for that neutral. You have to work to get that single fireball to hit the other opponent or hit their supports or to do something for you or to save you in a substitution situation. This is what the whole idea is of you putting your own work into the game. You putting your own efforts, right, that justify a reward based off of your decision making. But if you just make the decision to do the option selector, the super, super strong thing all the time, right, then everything is free. You don't have to work too much for anything. And then it doesn't really feel great when you're winning. I don't really understand, in a lot of these three-man teams, when I play them and I play these three-man meta teams, I understand that they just work, right? And basically, whoever can get to these things first or has less misinputs will win. But the problem with that is, one, it's not as satisfying or satiating as I mentioned before. It's not as meaningful at all because you're just doing the same thing over and over again for the most part. Even when it comes to, say, dash stopping, people always just dash stop right in front of the person and then jail them. That is also an option select. But what you see when you watch my latest series in Naruto Storm Connections is I do variable dash stopping, which is I sometimes dash right on a dime right in front of them in jail. Other times I will do the same thing, but then not combo. I will like mix it up, maybe throw a shuriken, do a jitsu, do a grab, do something different. Of course, other people do that. But the other aspect of the variable dash stop timing is you can do it one step, one body behind, right in front of them, 2, 3, 4 bodies, even 5 bodies right in front of them, and create like a stutter step, like a crossover in basketball, right? So like those are types of things that, I would say I innovated, even though it sounds stupid to say that, but these are the higher level things that you can do even when you have an option select, right? Which will at least give you some degree of skill, right? But the reality is when you dash stop right in front of them, everything else becomes pretty much free in that situation, and now you're in the advantage. So when you base all of your gameplay off of option selects based off of either jitsus or double dashing or dash stopping or awakening with six pass Madara, right? Or awakening with Might Guy, these types of things, or even using puppets that have a double guard, which is infinitely valuable, especially in Naruto Storm connections where guards break easily. Having that puppet absorb a lot of things, having that puppet play in the neutral for you for free in connections is a lot more powerful than it was even in prior games. So even though puppets were a lot better in certain ways in past games, like even since Storm 2 with Sasori, for instance, in Storm 2, right? He is just widely known as the best meta character in the game, hands down. That's what people think. Is he overall? I don't know. He may not be, in my opinion, potentially, but he also may be. That's something that I'll have to explore maybe later on. I don't know if I will. I don't know if I have the time to do that. I don't know if I will be venturing in that direction. I'm just talking more about skill in Naruto Storm 4 and Naruto Storm connections. So, you know, I talked a lot about that. Now, what I'll say is that I believed as well that you had more options with the restand, right? The kunai restand in the pre-patch versions of Naruto Storm Connections. Now, for me, the worst version of Naruto Storm Connections is the latest version. It's the most boring. There's the least amount of options to play in a skill-based way. Every other form of that game, even the initial form with the armor and all that on the Jitsu, in my opinion, was better. Once you learned how to play it, once you got used to it, once you understood that version of the game actually felt so horrible to me. I wanted to quit the game in the first few months. I was like the worst player in the first month or so. I was so bad. I couldn't go from Storm 4 to Storm Connections. I hated Storm Connections on release date. I really disliked it. And then I kind of just threw my hands up in the air and said, I'm going to just start doing what I did in past games for fun. And I played with no support. I went right in. The only way past the fire is through the fire, not around the fire, And that's where the trial is. That's where, you can get better. That's where you can get that expert, unique knowledge of becoming a wounded healer, of becoming someone who suffers through something to learn something exceptional that can help you in other ways. And that might be too much, but I think it's true. And what I'll say is I started doing that, and then all of a sudden I got an insane skill boost, right? I got an insane level up of my fundamentals in the game, and then I was better able to play the game even in lag. But then when there's a certain amount of lag, you just can't play. And then when there's one-sided lag and you're playing someone similarly in skill to you, maybe not the same but similar, you just can't win those fights. Whether I'm the one that has the leg advantage or you are, right? It's whatever. And I think that goes back to, that's why probably a lot of players actually do the option selects and play the meta teams, is because whether they can articulate it or not, the reality is they realize that they are more stable and do a lot better over time. It's more reliable to use those teams. It's more you get more success and less stress, because when the lag does kick in, you tend to have lag resistance or lag. You even to some degree, some of these characters either combos, like Neji's mash is lag proof. It's not even lag resistant. It's lag proof. It still works in the lag. So there's that, right? And then there's certain jutsus as well, or characters that are basically highly lag resistant or maybe even lag proof. So if you are playing an edgy player and then it happens to lag a little bit, they can just win just because it lagged. And if you have nothing on your team that has similar properties when there's lag, right, in these games, then you're at a huge disadvantage. And it doesn't matter at that point if you're more skilled or they're more skilled. And that is where the issue comes with a lot of these players that a lot less skilled players can beat a very skilled veteran. And this is this is where the whole problem of these games really starts to be identified, right? As most people understand, right? When you're competing, say, in the Olympics, or you're competing on a sports team or something like this, or even if you're competing in a card game or anything, it doesn't really matter. You know, it's whoever makes the best decisions, as long as the game is decently balanced, it doesn't have to be perfectly balanced. Whoever makes the best decisions, right, will win in that situation, even like in a chess match, right? So that's where Storm is different. So I basically put up with all of this stuff. I fought through it. I dealt with it. I got better initially in Storm Connections. I learned how to play that version of the game. And then right as I learned how to play the game and I was about to teach you guys, and I was starting to teach you guys with battle analysis, I think I only put 2 or 3 out there with, I think, Perfect Kale Can or Drip Lord Entertainment and a couple other people. And I started doing that. We got the first patch, right? And that changed everything. Now there is no more armor in the game or anything like that. And the game, I think, to a certain degree, got better. Now, it's a little bit blurry for me between that patch and then the second patch, or maybe the third patch even, in addition to that. I don't know if we're in the third or fourth patch, I forget, but I know the original version of the game, Naruto Storm Connections, was good. I know that the first patch was good and the second patch was good, even though it was different. But I know that it became a lot less fun in those patches. But then I learned to play those patches how they were intended, and I still think overall they were less fun. But, I picked up, learned how to do the kunai restand. That wasn't the staple of my skill or anything like that. I still valued the 2-man team experience a lot. But what I realized is that if I wanted to ever do a 3-man competitive online, right, or to do meta or a heavy class version of teams, or a hard style or heavyweight, as I mentioned in some of those videos. I made a video on the power classes of Naruto Storm. It's a very, very good video if you haven't seen it. It explains lightweight and middleweight and heavyweight. So I always like to compete in middleweight. That's my favorite. I think lightweight's a little bit too boring, not enough power, but middleweight is where all the action is and all the skill and all the neutral, competitive, skill-based neutral. It's what someone should always do. But, some part of me always wanted to say, hey, by never competing in heavyweights for a long time, right, or hardstyle or meta teams, I've left a lot on the table. I don't even know what I'm capable of. I've been working on my fundamentals for years in Storm 4 and in Connections, and I wanted to know, how good am I? And I'll be honest with you, I think I only did it for something like 3 days to 2 weeks or something like that. That was it. That's all the time I did it. And I went from 15,000 BP on my Don't Lose to Fear account to 31,000. Top 500. I think I was ranked 398. So in something like 3 days to maybe a little bit more than that, I spent some of those days just training, right? Or thinking about it and figuring out what my teams were. And I decided on Minato, and I decided on a few different supports. And, people, it's interesting. Even though Tamari is definitely one of these automatic characters that do stuff for you, and I joke about the game being Naruto Storm Tamari, and not Naruto Storm Connections. It's not just that, because even though she's really good, she's there are a lot of other supports that are basically just as good. Like Boro, for instance. I would not say that he's weaker. He's different, right? He's different, but he's not any better. And people are using that support and not complaining about it. And sometimes maybe he's not quite as good, but other times he's much better than her. If you can get that slowdown on someone, I mean, dude, it's like a super slowdown. They're not going anywhere, and you just inhibit them completely, and they cannot escape you.
right? And it wastes substitution bars, and even the alternate jitsu was good too. And back in the beginning of the game, when I was trying to use a Hanzo 3-man team, and I did, and I had a great success with that, I was just ripping through people with the Boro and Hinata support. That's another one. Hinata is really good too. They did nerf her a little bit, but she's really good. There's a lot of great supports out there. Um, and I think you're either playing that level of heavyweight supports or meta supports, right? And you're trying to compete against other meta supports, or you're not complaining about it, right? Because, like, I don't know how to explain that any other way. Like, I created an entire no support Minato series from 0 BP to 10,000 BP, right? And I never complained about the supports. So think about this. Not only am I not using, most of these, like, before I used to use weak supports, right, in 2-man teams, and I was able to defeat meta teams, even with Tamari, no problem. Will they get something sometimes? Sure, because that's how that works. But the reality is they rely on that most of the time, and that they get rusty with their fundamentals. They get rusty on the real skill aspects of the game. So as long as the connection is good, with 2 weak to medium supports, you can beat 3 strong characters and 3 strong supports, which should tell you a lot in the game. I was able to, for 10,000 BP, 0 to 10,000 BP, able to win with just Minato and no support ever. Zero support ever used to win the game in an advantageous position. It was just me fighting other people. And I created that whole series for you guys, to inspire you guys, to show you there's a different way, and to show you that you don't need supports to win. But if you, that's the truth. The truth is you don't need them if you get skilled enough. But there are so few people that actually work on this real skill thing, right? Versus the automatic thing, that they just miss that entire aspect of the game. It kind of washes over them, or they just didn't understand it, or they didn't realize it, or they just never heard of this, or they never saw an example of this. And I tried everything in my power to kind of put that series out there as best as I could, and we got some pretty good reception. A lot of videos got 1,000 to 3,000 views, and that's great, but a lot of them also didn't get very many views. But I tried my best to show people that there's a different way. Now, I still like to play 3-man meta teams or heavyweight teams about 10% of the time, right? Overall, maybe 15% of the time. But eventually I get tired of it, because I'm so proficient with that, and I play in such a different way, that there's nothing really there for me to learn anymore, right? I did everything I wanted to do, I achieved everything I wanted to achieve, and to be honest, I never came across someone, right, that fully challenged me or made me feel like there's so much more for me to learn. I've always had that, even in Storm 4, for the longest time. I kept getting to the next level, and I kept thinking there has to be a next level, and then I got to the next level. There has to be, so there was always that room to grow. In connections, for whatever reason, once you get to a certain level, regardless of your playstyle, like whether you're playing a 3-man meta team or you're playing more skill-based 2-man teams like I usually do, especially when I did the 1 support there, it got to the point where I ended at 10,000 because it became extremely boring for me. And that entire thing as a whole was very frustrating and difficult, but I didn't complain about it, and I did it. And then once I did it, I don't want to say I became bored, but there was nothing exciting anymore for me. I had climbed Mount Everest, right? I climbed it. Now what am I going to do? There's nothing else to climb. That's basically the greatest thing you could have climbed, and you did it, and cool. And I did it, wearing boxer briefs or a swimsuit, and that's it somehow. So it's, that's what doing 1 support is like. It's crazy. Don't make me, I'm not trying to undermine, nor am I trying to boast about how difficult that was and how great of an achievement that was. That was so great of achieve. That was so great of an achievement, right? That Minato no support challenge, that I literally had no haters comment. I had the haters watching, I'm sure, but there was nothing they could say to comment negatively about this, because it was the most amazing, most fantastic thing any Storm player had ever achieved ever. And it's there for people to watch forever, hopefully. As long as the channel's around, as long as it doesn't get taken down or anything like that, people can enjoy that and people can learn from it. The important thing is, it's not that, haha, I'm so great, right? It's more, look what a person can achieve as an anime fan. Look what a person can achieve with hard work. Look what a person can achieve if they put their mind to it. Look how great the game can be if we choose to play it in this way. Problem is, most people will never play it in that meaningful way. Most people will not take up, well, not only will they not do the no support, they will give up when doing the no support because it's extremely difficult, right? And then what you really want people to do is to not do that, but to do a 2 support all the time, and to pick fairly, fair characters if possible. Now, you're limited by a lot of characters because a lot of characters don't work in lag. So, for instance, I used to use Alive Minato with PTS Obito, and in the current version of the game, PTS Obito is he's volatile in lag, meaning he doesn't even work in lag. He doesn't get ported into the game properly in lag. His fireball will go through people. He'll miss. It'll go to the side and not even calibrate. His startup frames and his alternate jutsu as well don't work, and he won't track. Kind of like what Tsunade did in Storm 4, and thank goodness they actually fixed that for connections. That's nice that they did that, made her playable, but for some reason, she's not very enjoyable to play in Storm 4 or in connections, and I don't know why. She's more enjoyable to play in past games. So, I achieved what I wanted to do in the initial no support with Minato. I put that out there. I achieved what I wanted to do in the time frame that I was available to do it. I achieved the 3-man meta team heavy style, like my Minato, Tamari, and Sasuke team, right? I achieved that and became a top 500 player when it was still viable to do that, when there was still a very strong competitive scene. I would say in the latest patch, once they introduced, leaving penalties and rage quitting penalties, a lot of people left. I was criticized because I had achieved everything I wanted to do and I just stopped. I was criticized, and people were talking a lot of bad things behind my back, saying that, oh, now you can't play in this version of the game because you can't use broken restands, and you can't rage quit. It was more about the restands, right? And it was more about not being able to play in a more balanced version of the game. And that's when I actually did the no support and said, what? Excuse me? What did you say? And I don't see any of those people in the comment sections now. When I prove them wrong, when they wrongfully assume that I was an unskilled player, that I relied on restands. Who cares about restands? The only reason why I like restands is it gave more depth to the game once you learned it. But for the people that didn't understand it, that didn't learn it, it was so fun, actually, once you learned it. Initially, it was not that fun, especially when people do it to you. But once you learn how to do it, that's the game, That was a big part of the game, and it was good. Okay, it's gone. That's fine. And then I learned to maximize everything possible out of the newest version of the game with Alive Minato in my no support challenge series. So I did that. I did the 3-man teams, but the thing I left on the table this time was the thing that I valued the most, and that was the meaningful play with 2-man teams. And that's what this series is. This series is me having fun, having as much fun as I possibly can, having the time of my life, and giving a gift to you guys. A complete gift here for the real ones, for the real anime fans, for the real Fearless Shinobi, for the people out there that understand everything I just said, that watch this entire video. You guys are the ones that will benefit the most from watching this channel, from listening to this video, is that this 2-man series that I'm doing, I don't know how many more fights there's left, maybe 50, 80 fights, something like that, 60 fights. And then it's probably going to be done, guys. But this is a gift for you to have, to go back, to watch. Do your best to enjoy it. I did it initially. I did these 2 series. I did them in 2 days, over a month ago. I stopped playing Naruto Storm games and Naruto Storm Connections over a month ago. I haven't played any games. I'm working on my health, and that's what I'm focusing on. And I'm not playing any games. Ever since I stopped playing Dragon Ball Sparking Zero, I stopped playing video games for the most part, And a big reason why I stopped playing video games was to focus on my health. But another reason why is I achieved everything that I wanted to achieve and that a person could ever possibly achieve in Storm games. I did it at the highest level in meta teams, 3-man meta teams. I did it with no support, and now I'm doing it with just 2 supports, just Minato and the Raikage, just those guys. And why did I do that? I did it because I wanted to get proficient with them. I know that if I stick to just one team, I'll get better with it. And man, oh man, like the day before I did the entire no support, right? So it's kind of like taking off ankle weights, like Rock Lee's ankle weights, and then just going crazy. Once I was given this extra support in the Raikage, once I was able to do 2-man teams and I got used to playing them again, guys, I have the most amazing, most fantastic, most skill-based 2-man teams, and probably some of the, not probably, for sure it is the most skilled gameplay out there for Naruto Storm Connections in a manual sense. If you're not using, broken R support air combos, right? If you're not using broken supports, if you're not using broken tactics, it's just the most skill-based thing. And I think a lot of you will appreciate it. I did it for you guys. I did it for the love of anime. I did it for myself to see how far I could go, what I could achieve. And I did it for, all the people out there that are looking to see a better way in what's possible with this game. And it's an educational series as it is a little bit of an entertainment series. And I'm going to do my best to show you what it is that I did so that you guys can pick some stuff up and get better yourselves, or at least see the game in a more positive light, in a more skill-based light. Okay? Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day, an amazing day. If not, I hope it gets better for you soon. Peace.